Episode 73 of the Sports Marketing Machine podcast. I sit down with the great Joe Rixon from FanIQ. We talk about 3 ways to level up your social media content. We talk about what type of fan experience content you should be creating, how to use user generated content, UGC, and influencers. Does it make sense to use them? Why not? We dive into it all, giving you lots of great takeaways to help you sell more tickets and grow your fan base. Here we go. Welcome to the Sports Marketing Machine podcast. These podcasts for those working in sports looking to level up their marketing skill set so that you can sell more tickets, sell more merchandise, and grow your fan base. I'm your host, Jeremy Nizer. Today, sitting down with the great Joe Rixon from FanIQ to talk about 3 things teams can do to level up their social media and content to get better engagement and sell more tickets. So, Joe, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
You got it. So before we dive in and we start tackling all these 3 topics, what is Fan IQ? And just a quick brief, what's your background?
Sure. So I came to FanIQ from a significant amount of time in the college space with a few different universities. Was in the nonprofit realm for a little bit, and then got back into the sports marketing game with FanIQ. And the simple breakdown of FanIQ, we help teams power their ad strategy with performance-driven content, right? And that means we say that it means matching content to audience and audience to platform. I mean, that's our big thing is identifying where your fans are, and then trying to find new audiences to target, and then trying to match the content to those audiences on the particular platform.
Perfect. And we know you're an evangelist of creating social media content to help people grow organically and with paid media. So we figured if there's anyone out there that knows this, it's like the back of their hand, it's you.
Yeah, I'm excited to be on. Like I said, I will talk to anybody about the future of paid social and digital, especially because things are happening so quickly and the platforms are moving so quickly, and they're all sort of trying to find their market space in the industry because it's getting saturated. So always happy to talk to anybody about sort of where they should be, what they should be doing, and where they should be going.
Perfect. All right. Well, let's dive in. So we've got three big takeaways that teams can do, and we're going to talk through each of them. So let's start with the first one: influencers. Why on earth would a team consider using an influencer?
Influencers are great for a lot of different reasons, right? You have some in your market that are tapped into big audience segments. Families are a big one. You're starting to see a lot more content and influencers turning it around single females and going out and having a good time. And so they are they are tapped into audience segments. They sort of already know what works within their group because they're doing something separate from whatever you would be asking them to do. They already have their own platform. Um, but influencers are also important. One, because if they're truly professional, they like I said, they already know what they're doing, right? You can reach out to them and say, hey, look, we're looking to do this. We want to work with you. Um, and they, like I said, they have a gauge for the audience already. So making sure that you have a pool of influencers within your area is really important because, like I said, it keeps you sort of tapped in and tuned into to those sort of engaged audiences that will be following those influencers.
So an influencer could be a mom who has a mom blog, a local mom blog, and has a lot of moms who make the decisions for their house. That's one. Or maybe there's a fitness guru that's in your community that could be focusing on doing a yoga night at the arena or the ballpark, right? So that's kind of what we're talking about here.
Yeah, fashion audiences are big too. So women who focus on fashion. We're starting to see more and more guys enter this fray too, and start to promote doing events with your friends and your bros and your fun. Those are usually uh, more targeted towards party drinking focus, right? We're starting to see more people sort of enter this space. The other reason too why influencers are important, especially amongst their group, usually they're pretty trusted within that group. So if someone's going to an event and they're promoting it, they're saying, well, I took my family here, or I did this with my friends. it's going to give you a little more clout than if you just ran an ad that said buy tickets now.
Got it. Got it. Makes sense. All right. So if you're thinking about using influencers, I'm sure there's some people out there that are quote unquote influencers that have all these followers, but in reality, like they're not actually like doing it. So how do you kind of get away from these landmines? Are there certain metrics that you look at to say, you know what, this is actually a true legit influencer, or this person's a dud?
Yeah, so I would first by starting doing research on people in your community that are influencers and that are valuable. Obviously, the more sort of localized you can make that, the better. But there's also a lot of great platforms that aggregate these influencers into one spot. They're almost like digital marketing, agencies for these influencers. And a lot of times they provide actual data metrics on them, who they've worked with, how many clients they've done, how many campaigns they've run. And so going to those can help you really vet the process. Then I always recommend just hopping on a quick call and sort of vetting them yourself. Obviously, if you're using an influencer, you're paying an influencer, or even if you're just trading tickets or experiences out to an influencer, I always like to ask a lot of questions to see if they are truly professional, right? Like if they
Mhm.
understand what I'm asking for. If they think there's a come out to the ballpark and get a few pictures, like that's not what we need. Like I have a shot list of about 30 to 40 things I'm going to need you to get over the course of a night, right? So a lot of times once they realize like this is a working gig, like I need you to grab this content for us and this is the expectation of what we need to get. A lot of times you can immediately tell like, oh, I'm overwhelmed by this and I can't do that, which is good, right? Like I'd rather
Mhm.
have that person say I can't do this or that's a lot, or a lot of times you can see by their facial expressions, like they start realizing this is actual work. And so the most important thing is trying to vet them out and find people who operate professionally, right? Like many of these people, I think they start an Instagram account like I'll just be an influencer, right? But looking at their actual metrics, right? Looking at their audiences, what kind of content they're promoting, you can tell pretty quickly whether or not someone understands the business of influencing and how to operate on these platforms versus someone who just has Instagram and sees other people doing it and think that they can do it too.
Yep. Such great points there. So let's just say you've narrowed in. Maybe you found a real estate agent that's got a tremendous following. She's very active in the community. What are some types of content that you want that person to specifically do? Let's just say you've got a game this next Friday or something like that. Let's just kind of go through an example. What would you've got your shot list, you've got some content. What works, what doesn't?
So usually what we find is general promotion of the game experience, right? So we want to use that video to sort of target five or six different things amongst different audiences, right? So one of the things we want them to grab is we have a lot of success with influencers in the soccer space, especially MLS. We've had a lot of success with it. Sporting KC, we've done a few of these. Um, we want them to grab, the walk into the stadium, what the merch store looks like, show them getting some merch. If there's drink specials, walking the concourse, right? We want them to grab the stuff that is indicative of a real day at the park, right, or a day at the game, or day at the match. And we want to focus on elements that will draw people who are not necessarily sports fans, because that's one of the things that we miss is like, yeah, sure, you can target your sports fans all day, right? The influencer's
Mhm.
goal should be to get to people who are not necessarily already within your funnel or your ecosystem, right? So have them make content about these are the drink specials I had, and this was the fun playground area where I can bring my kids, and we got photos of the mascot, right? Like grabbing the content that will make someone who isn't necessarily a fan go, oh wow, that was fun. I didn't know there was all that stuff going on. Right? That ultimately is the goal. Is to make somebody go, oh wow, I didn't know that looks like fun. I might actually enjoy going with my friends, or that does seem like a nice day out with the family. Like maybe it's worth going over there for the afternoon, right? So your goal through the influencer should really be to grab the sort of those ancillary elements of the game experience, so that you can bring people into your funnel that wouldn't necessarily fall into the your usual retargeting groups that you're reaching out to in these platforms.
Perfect. So let's talk about like, all right, so we vetted them out, we found someone, we've got some good content. Should we actually spend some dollars to amplify it on Facebook or Instagram just to get it in front of more people or TikTok? Or should we just let organic let it do its thing? Does it make sense to spend some money?
Absolutely. The one I think missed opportunity is that you could go out and you could get an influencer and have them make fantastic content. They could co-tag, they could co-brand you on the content. You could be like, oh wow, that's really cool. But one, you're limited on what kind of metrics you can see, especially if it's being posted by the influencer themselves on the platform. But secondly, you influencer content works great repurposed as a paid piece, like just running it. Don't overcomplicate it. You can just run it as if it's a regular ad because it looks like it fits within the feed already, right? I think the crux of everything I do is letting teams know that the old way of doing things where you slapped up a ticket ad, like those days are over. They're done.
Yep.
Like we need to start viewing these platforms the same way I view commercials on my TV. I can change the channel if a commercial comes on, I can swipe up, right? And
Hmm.
so our internal data shows that you're lucky if you get an impression and a half out of a piece of content before people start scrolling by it, right? So like if you have four ads running, they're all banging over your head, please buy tickets. People are going to swipe. You're just losing. You're basically throwing money out the window, right? So the
Hmm.
goal should be to make content in these platforms that matches what they're already seeing within their feed, right? So influencer content works great because it looks like something that would already be on their screen. It doesn't look like it's an ad. And
Hmm.
usually we find that if I get you to watch that video over 15, 20 seconds, you're hooked. I got you. Even if you realize it's an ad like 15 seconds in, you're like, oh, wow, that's pretty cool. And then I can start delivering. I can start delivering you more ads
Hmm.
based on what sort of audience demos you fall into. Maybe it's more influencer content. Maybe eventually it is a paid static, right? But the reason why influencer content does work so well is it fits seamlessly into their feed. And so the
Hmm.
goal should be to get people to watch your video, engage with the content, viewing, commenting, sharing, because that is indicative usually whether or not they're going to wind up buying. And the goal should be to sort of, I don't know if trick's the right word, but like get people to not necessarily see your ad and their first thought be, oh my gosh, this is just a commercial for the local sporting team, right? The goal should be go, well, it looks fun. Oh, it's an ad, but still, I'll click on, I'll buy a ticket, or let me click on it and see what prices are, right? The goal should ultimately be first and foremost to engage, and so that's why influencer content I think works really well. Just repurposed as a paid ad. You could have them run it organically on their feed. That's totally fine. You can run it organically on your feed. That's totally fine. But you're really missing out if you're not repurposing these this influencer content in a paid way.
Yeah, we call that soft sell and hard sell in sports. Like when you're making the sales calls, a hard sell is like, well, can we count on your support? And then this is a soft sell. We're not like demanding you to do anything. There's not a like demanding clear call to action right then and there, unless we
Yeah.
put it in there. So if there is a call to action and we're asking people to buy tickets, how are we tracking the ticket sales from it?
So usually, when we're targeting by audience, right? So we are building out sort of a content library within each of these audiences. So if we're targeting families or we're targeting beauty mavens, we call our groups that are into like beauty and fashion, and or if we're targeting um, um, adventure seekers, right? We have usually a library of content underneath each of those that sort of fit that particular audience.
Hmm.
And so what we're doing, and then and so we will either set up for that to go to a retargeting campaign, like, oh, you've engaged in the content, I'm going to start serving you more uh, intentional ads around ticket purchases, or we'll build out a retargeting campaign within that particular audience. We keep delivering you that sort of content, right? So once somebody has sort of fallen into that aspect of the funnel, we want to keep engaging them with content that is relevant to them, and then eventually get them to purchase it.
Yep, makes perfect sense to me. Sorry, we've talked about influencers, a lot of great information. Folks can always rewind and listen back to the questions and Joe's responses. Let's start talking about UGC. What is UGC?
So UGC really is organic content that your fans are making, right? So the goal is to scroll through your existing social channels, your hashtags, your team, and these platforms. You would be amazed at how many of your fans make content better than you make it.
Yep.
And I know that sounds crazy, but it is, and you'd be amazed at how many of them will let you just use it, right? So whether that's like them, capturing, we got some great content from some of our partners of, kids uh, having their birthday party at the ballpark, right? They captured the mascot coming over them, seeing like the team didn't get that. The parents got that, right? And so we're talking about like family nights. Boom. That's something easy. We can either optimize that, edit it, and then run it as its own piece, or make a video around the fan experience or fan engagement, or birthday party packages. We can use that in there, right? So the value in using UGC is one, it doesn't, it looks like it fits into the feed, right? Because you're grabbing it from Instagram, you're grabbing it from TikTok, you're grabbing it from Snap, so it's already
Hmm.
content optimized for the feed. But it also helps your fans feel engaged, right? It's like, oh, the team reached out to me, they wanted to use my video, and you can use these organically, right? You can say, hey, we got this video from so and so, give them a shout out, or you can take that content, run it in the paid, right? I think once again, if you don't take anything away from this, I take away that the content you're making should really be matching the platform that it's on. Whether that's highlighting the fan experience around you once again, you would be these other people who have videos for teams just around what they wore to the game. Like we call
Hmm.
that bedroom content. Like this is what I wore to the game tonight. Like you want to do a piece on merch, boom, there you go. Like
Yep.
you've got like organic content around that, right? And so we are big on UGC. One because it's easy, right? You see the staffer to go through and find great content.
Hmm.
And then, like I said, you just flip it over, you turn it into a paid ad, or you morph it into a new piece of content. But and most of your fans, you will find, will be surprised at how willing they are to just let you use their stuff.
And this may be the most dumbest question that I asked today. How do you find the UGC? Do you just type in the name of the Florida Everblades in Instagram, or do you type in like Everblades hockey? Like someone tag us? Like how am I finding UGC content?
Yeah, so the user generated content, we find it through just if you have a team hashtag, that's an easy way to do it. If you just search the team name, you can search game details, a lot of things you can look up, but it is fairly, I mean, you'd be amazed. I'm always amazed when we work with partners and I type in, it could be a small minor league baseball team, right? I'll type in the team name and I'll find 1,000 videos that people have been posting for games. And you're like, I didn't even know this stuff was out there, right? Especially if you have
Mhm.
a small shop or you don't have a lot of dedicated resources to like multimedia, like you have an intern, for example, running a lot of your social accounts, like this is an easy way to grab content and promote your team without necessarily needing someone with a videography experience and $1,000 camera to know what they're doing.
Perfect. I've seen teams and even local businesses see the user generated content, either they're tagged or they're finding it, and they'll share it to their story. But
Mhm.
oftentimes they're not running ads to it, or they're not, I don't know what the word, duplicating it so it shows up in their feed, but they're only using it for the story that disappears. You can use it for any of these places, right?
Yes, absolutely. We recommend that teams run this. If it's a good piece, run it in paid. Like I said, if engagement is king, you need to have as many things floating out there as possible, right? If the goal is to keep the content fresh and eliminate a reduction of ROAS, it means you need to have a bunch of different content. We were at the Big 12 Summit last year. Gary Vee spoke, and I remember, he said, you all should have. He's talking to all the Big 12 schools, for example. He said, oh, you should all should have 30 pieces of content running at any given time in the paid space, and you could see everybody's heads just explode because they're like,
Yeah.
how do I make 30 pieces? Like this is unreal. Well, this is how you do it, right? It's like
Yep.
incrementally. Like so, it can be overwhelming when you're a small shop to think, man, how do I run 30 different pieces? We'll break it into pies, right? I just need to make a few paid pieces that look nice. Maybe these are the ones that eventually drive a sale, or they work on a platform like Meta, where those but more buy ticket ads, the bang over your head pieces, like where
Hmm.
they might work better. Really, like if you just say, man, if I could just get like 6 or 7 UGC videos, and maybe I can get this influencer to give me 4 or 5 pieces of content, enough content to make 4 or 5 different pieces, right? Like now it's not so overwhelming, right? I can get
Hmm.
to 30, like it's not hard. And so, like I said, the goal is to make as much content as possible by making that content as diverse as possible, right? So you can get there. You can get there. It's hard, but you can make it a lot easier for yourself by using resources at your disposal that work smarter, not harder, sort of philosophy, right? And UGC will definitely help you get there by taking that content, like I said, either just flipping it, repurposing it, or making it into a sort of a new thing.
So in reality, so I go into Instagram and I type in I'm gonna use Florida Everblades. I see a
Mhm.
bunch of content. I click on it. I download it, then upload it onto my account and tag the person who had originally posted it. Is that kind of what I'm doing here?
Yeah, or a lot of times you don't even need to tag them. You just say, hey, we'd like to be able to use your content. permission is always the biggest thing, right? Like you
Hmm.
never want to just take it and flip it and use it. Make sure you get permission from the person to make sure that you're using it. Make sure they understand the context of why you're using it. Hey, look, we loved your video. We loved the video of your son's birthday party. Like we'd love to be able to use that in some of our content, right? Just make sure there's no privacy issues. They may not want pictures of their family
Hmm.
or their group posted, but 99% of the time, they're almost always going to say yes, right? So, yeah, so just taking that and then downloading it and flipping it and uploading it to whatever advertising platform that you're using. It really is that simple.
Man, that's great. All right, third one, and we touched on this a little bit with influencer content and UGC. Uh, I see a lot of teams in their social media feeds. It's only game highlight clips because it's easy. They've got a software, or someone's already cutting these, or the video guy's already doing it, and it's the home run to left field, or the game scoring, or the great pass, or whatever it is, but they leave out fan experience content. Why is it so important to share fan experience content?
I think if you look at most of our partners, our highest performing pieces of content often have nothing to do with the product on the floor. And that should ultimately be your goal, right? If the goal is to sell tickets regardless of whether or not we're losing. Like, how do we do that, right? And so you do that by making content around the fan experience. So, for example, Atlanta Hawks are a client of ours. Are one of our top two or three highest performing pieces of content for them last year was an ad around the team store and just exclusive things exclusive to the team store that you can't get other places, right? Targeted that towards the sneakerhead crowd, the fashion group, right? We actually never mentioned buying a ticket in that. Never says buy tickets. It never says tickets are on sale. It is just here's a cool place to get the trade twos. Like this is like check out this exclusive collection of
Mhm,
sneakers they have. Like we never mentioned tickets, and it performed well because on the platforms, the ad copy or a lot of times the little widgets they sort of have at the bottom that say buy tickets. If somebody wants to buy a ticket off the ad, they can. It's not like you're like, oh, well, what am I supposed to do with this, right? It's clear on most of these
mhm,
platforms eventually that it's an ad. So building building content around how fun your environment is ultimately where you're going to be successful, right? And it works whether or not the team is performing or not,
mhm,
right? Like that, like the team could be 10-45, right? But that game looks fun. Sure, they have exclusive merch at the team store. If I want this cool sneaker, it's one of the places I can get it, or hey, they have like great like birthday packages, or they have great suites, or they have great they have a ticket special where I can bring the family. Like all of those things should work whether or not the team is performing it. And the highlights are good. Once again, the amount of content you're running should be very diverse. But more often than not, like when you're rolling highlight clips or content, that stuff should still be engaging and special. You shouldn't be saying, "Oh, we won 3-2. Here's some highlights." You should be like, "Hey, did you know that this guy plays for our team and he hit a home run? It's his third home run of the season." Like, you be making it because his third home run in 4 games. Like he's a stud, right? Like, and
mhm,
you could do that simply by taking that content and just doing a male voiceover and being
mhm,
like, like as if it's some new fun thing. Like, oh, this guy's been crushing over the month of May. It's so good. You could use AI voiceover. Now it's a
mhm.
brand new thing, right?
Yep.
Like so, and to me, when I think about, and this is a personal thing for me too, because I grew up going to sporting events a lot with my dad and my family, and most of the time I can't tell you who won or lost those games, right?
Mhm,
Like I have no idea, right? I just remember going to the ballpark with my dad, seeing the Phillies at Old Veterans Stadium, that
mhm,
dump,
mhm.
right? Like,
Yep,
but
I've been
that's what I
there.
remember. That's what I remember. It's my dump. If you say anything
It's
bad
my
about me, I'm
dumping
going
up.
to punch you. But that's what I remember, right? It's those additional elements of the game experience. And so for me, it's a very personal endeavor to make sure like are we promoting the fun things that your event is doing. And like I said, there's a misconception like we deal with clients all the time in their marketing department is like, well, why would I pay money to run an ad of just like organic repurposed organic content? Because it delivers. Like the data doesn't lie. Like across almost every one of our partners, that game experience content that doesn't even mention tickets outperforms on most platforms the ticket sales ad. So if your goal is to make money
Mhm,
and to drive revenue, this is what you should be doing. If you're a young marketing person, if you can make money and prove your ROAS to your department, there will always be a job for you,
yep.
right? So if by understanding, look, the market is changing. people are on these platforms, they're tuning out of things that appear to be ads more quickly. How do we just keep engaging them in our product and make our products fun and make sure that they're not seeing the same ad twice in a month, right? We're just throwing new things at them all the time. That will make you money, right?
Hmm.
That will make you money. Especially younger people, they want content that's more authentic. Their focus is engagement, right? So you have to give them something that makes them feel something or want something. And by you do that with the fan experience content, they are not moved by tickets. It just doesn't work anymore, right? And I know that's tough to understand for like an old school marketing person. Even me, it's like tough sometimes. Like, wow, like this ad that said buy tickets didn't do as well as a video of a one of our clients was San Jose Sharks, and one of our highest performing engaging videos for them was a kid who drank his beer out of a shoe, like like on a college night, like that video went through the roof. Videos of like puppies and dogs, like we work
Uh-huh.
with a lot of teams that do like they work with America's Vet dogs, like service
Hmm.
animals, right? Like those videos do unbelievable. Like we don't work with them, but the Washington Capitals did one last year, like Alex Ovechkin holding one of these puppies and like broke the internet, right?
Hmm.
So like the idea, like so for me, it's something like what? Wait, that video sold more tickets than this piece I intentionally made to sell tickets, right? It's like really, really weird, but that's what we're in now. Like this is the
Hmm.
world that we're living in. This is it.
Yep.
And so once you understand that, once you understand, how to make content and how to focus your content strategy, you'll make more money.
There is definitely a space for these direct to call to actions, buy tickets now, but I think that playing field used to be, well, you got to do more of these. It's now tilted a little bit where you have to make more engaging content. I always tell teams like you want to be able to share content to let folks know what they can experience when they come. Why should they come to your games? Is it just because you have a hockey team or just because you have baseball? You have to create content to give people a reason to come, and I think some teams get it, some teams don't. Do you ever give them a recommendation of here's how much like fan experience percentage content versus like game action? What's that 50-50 percentage? What do you give them?
Man, that's a tough question because even most of our game highlight content is almost always geared around. It's very rarely ever just like here's the highlights from last night's game. It's more of just like, Embiid had, so this is his third consecutive 40-point game. The next one could be another 40. Like you need to be there. Like that type of thing is even that highlight stuff. We're making it special. We're making it feel like a voiceover and influencer piece on this platform. And what's great about social is like you can A/B test. Like that's
Yep.
another thing that we
Hmm.
love to do. Like a lot of our soccer content, we're running the same ad with three different AI voiceovers, right? And so that helps us like identify like which one of these is actually selling tickets for us. Like which one of these voices is respectable. And we're finding like for example with soccer audiences, British men sell more tickets. I don't know why, right? But because there's so many tools out there with these platforms that test these sort of fun things,
Hmm.
you can run. That's the other thing we recommend too is you start off big, right? Like you run a bunch of pieces, and then as you get closer to your event, you find the ones that are performing the most, and you dump your resources into them because they're clearly moving the needle more than the others, right?
Hmm.
But that's the other thing I recommend too is like test and play, like get creative,
Hmm.
have a good time with it. Like I said, you should be running every ad in three or four different ways, especially if it's a voiceover, because you can use your radio host. Maybe you're a minor league team or you're HL team. You have a really great play-by-play person. Use one with them,
Hmm.
and then take that same thing and test it with a female voice, a male voice, a male British voice. Like try and play around. Like that's the other thing that I think is. I think a lot of times once we frame it as like this is supposed to be fun,
Hmm.
like pulling the levers, like this is fun, right? Like I think that especially if you're like sort of an overworked director of marketing, right,
Hmm.
for a minor league team or a smaller major college, like what's nice about that is when once we reiterate, it's like, look, take a deep breath, right?
Uh-huh.
Here's how we get to the 30 pieces or whatever we need to be running, all right? And then here's how we have fun with it. Let's just like test and see what works and what doesn't work. And by doing that, you learn a lot about your audience. You go, oh wow, I
Hmm.
didn't know that was. We no matter what campaign we run, we're learning something. Like we're taking that and going, wow. Like we did some events for the men's national soccer team last year, and men's fashion was their highest performing audience.
Who knew?
Like we walked away from that, and we were like, wow. Like I'm glad we tested that. We tested it because we saw it work someplace else. We were like, oh well, let's just try it here and see if it works, right? But feel free to test and learn. And if you are if you're resource tight,
Mm-hmm.
right, go out and find an agency that works in this space because either as a consultant or bring them on to run your campaigns because they'll be able to tell you what works across industry, right? So I understand that a lot of times when we talk to teams all the time, say, look, I have a small budget, I have a
Mm-hmm.
5K budget, 7K budget. I'm gonna just retarget, and I'm gonna go after my same audiences. Right? I'm just gonna target, retarget, because that's easy money. You get
Yep.
4x, they can get 5x. You know, one you're not really building your fan base. You're just going after the same people you've always
Mm-hmm.
gone after, and you don't know if they would have bought a ticket anyway, right? They may have bought a ticket anyway. Like that's
Mm-hmm.
not really just because you've retargeted and you've done well doesn't necessarily mean that you really drove the sale. I mean, they just might have seen your ad and then bought to next weekend anyway. Um, but by by targeting new people, what you'll find is historically, once again, this was very surprising to me too. New audiences tend to spend more than your existing audiences. So one
100%.
of the things we discovered with the Big 12 football championship is we did a big retargeting campaign for them. Obviously, the Big 12 huge conference, a lot of great fan bases, right?
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people pull from their other championships at AT&T. We ran 8x. It was awesome. $400 per average order value. You're like, that's great. That's fantastic. But then we targeted towards people who traveled right? They spent 40% more. So the average order value was almost $600, right? So like and I'm not saying if you're a minor league team, but once again, if you're a minor league team, maybe it's 20, the difference between 20 and 35, or 20
Mm-hmm.
and 40,
Yeah,
right?
it's
Like
huge. Mm-hmm.
bring in that incremental revenue. And then here's how I break it down too for people is you can't just look at, and it's tough to calculate, right? But if you say the average person, let's say season tickets, average season ticket over last in college where I was, it was like 7 years, right? When you talk about targeting new people and bringing new people on, you can't just look at like what the ROAS is this year.
Mm-hmm.
You have to look at lifetime revenue, right?
Yep.
So like it's not 7x, it's 49x if you do it right. Like
Yep.
right, like
Mm-hmm.
that's how. And so when you're running these campaigns, it's tough to get buy-in for a lot of times your superiors to say, look, I want to go out and I want to target men's fashion. I want to go out and I want to target, um, VIP seekers. Like if we have club areas, like I want to go out and target those people. It's tough, but that's where like a good agency comes in,
Mm-hmm.
or even if you just want to bring them on as a consultant, or like I said, you want to bring them on, they can sort of help you say what works, what doesn't work. They can find comparables for you, or just reach out to like peers in the industry, like call your buddies who have done this, or I'm a big convention guy. I love conventions, so try to find like if you're the association for whatever business you're in, you'll learn a lot. Like
Mm-hmm.
you'll find out a lot. You'll be able to pick people's brains. You could do it that way too. Like try to find out what works, what doesn't work. You know, I understand there's a risk averseness a lot of times, but you're leaving a lot of money on the table if you're not
Yep.
venturing out of your existing audiences. And I know that's scary, but at the same time, with the way these platforms work, they're getting very good at targeting. They're getting very good at following these customers. Like, take advantage of these platforms and the fact they can identify these audiences for you, um, and develop really sort of a cohesive strategy around your digital, and make sure that you are, like I said, not just running content. Try to do your best to match that content to the platform and make sure that you are having a good time with it and testing and playing around and see what works. But it can be overwhelming, but if you do it right, it'll pay off amazingly for
Mm-hmm.
you and your team. And like I said, if you are a young professional, if you are making money for your team, like I said,
You'll always have a
there's
job.
always you will always have a job, right? You will
Mm-hmm.
always have a job. And I know, like I said, it can be overwhelming, but it's really not as scary as I think a lot of times it's made out to be. But if you need help, like I said, reach out to an agency or reach out to peers in the industry. And just like iron sharpens iron, pick ideas, get ideas.
Yeah, absolutely. When it comes to creating content, are there softwares that a lot of the big league teams use, or some softwares that you recommend for your mid majors and your minor leagues that just don't have a big staff to be able to create content fast? So they film it on their phone, they're going to throw it into Final Cut. Like that's going to take a while. What do you
Yeah.
recommend?
So I think a lot of times most of these teams are using a platform like CapCut. Like it's just, yeah, and once again, here's the beauty of making things look organic. It doesn't take as much work, right? Like a lot of times you can make ads based using just the tools on the platform. Like that, like that's what's amazing that I think once you break it down, like, look, it's really not that hard, right? Like
Hmm.
you can make a if the goal is to make a piece look organic, sort of the best way to do that is to make it look organic, right?
Yep.
So I mean, CapCut, there's a lot of them out there, um, but really a lot of the stuff you can do right from your phone on
Hmm.
in platform, right, which is great. So, like I said, once you demystify it, it doesn't really seem so bad. And it's one of those things too where like, we were meeting with a team a few months ago and they have an unbelievable content team that make, very like JJ Abrams style on field content, like
Wow.
but once again, sidelines in we call it, right? Which is
Uh-huh.
like on field, team intro, right? Like action shots of guys getting touchdowns. And we're showing them sort of the metrics. And one of the guys goes, it's so funny. He goes, so you tell me that stuff looks crappy does better? And I'm like, I wouldn't put it that way. Like, I
Yes.
wouldn't put it that
What?
way. I would just
That's
say
funny.
the stuff that sidelines up is doing better. Let's just put it
Mhm.
that way. So the stuff that
Yep.
sidelines up is doing better. Now, once again, if you want to factor in some of that cool on-field content as part of a video, great, do
Go
it.
for it.
That's fine. But like the on-field stuff just doesn't seem to move the needle. And if it does move the needle, it's usually for people who were going to buy anyway,
Yep,
right?
makes
So
sense.
so yeah, so I wouldn't call it the crappier stuff. I would say the sidelines up,
Mm.
organic style,
Yep.
user generated stuff. It tends to be doing better. But once again, it makes sense, right? If it matches what's on the platform, you're more likely to engage with that particular piece of content. I mean, really, that's what it comes down to is engagement, and that's going to move the needle for you.
Absolutely. At the end of each episode, we go through the main takeaways from today. So we talked about influencers and using them and how they have such a rabid audience, many cases, to be able to use them. We talked about using user generated content, UGC, and how you could duplicate it or reuse it to be able to help get you a little bit more organic reach and even amplify it as well. We also talked about the importance of creating fan experience content. We talked a little bit about the balance of doing some game action ones, but also some fan experience ones and how well they are. Anything we missed today, Joe? No, we hit influencers, UGC, and fan experience.
Yeah, like it really just comes down to making sure that whatever you're running is engaging, that's fun, that it's reaching out to new audiences you might not thought of doing. And with the way these platforms are designed, um, you you can be a lot more effective in how you do that. But just think about when you're scrolling social media, the ads that you swipe past, just do the opposite of that, right? Like I
Mm.
mean that's really what it comes down to is making sure that you're engaging people with content, and then it helps your other brands too. The other thing I didn't touch on too is if you can identify new audiences, if you can identify new groups that are doing well for you, that has positive influences across your entire organization. So we're
Hmm.
finding a lot of times we give schools and teams reports of, hey, here's some new audience we targeted that did really well. You're now empowering teams like your sponsorship rights group to then go out and say they're now empowered with data. Like let's say you went out and you targeted luxury car owners and that group did well. Your sponsor group could say, all right, I have actual data that proves that your customers are coming to my games.
Hmm.
And it makes that a lot easier. So once you talk about revenue and how
Yep.
like how it grows exponentially, that's how you do it. And as a marketing person, as a ticket person who may be doing this too, you have a lot more power than you think. There's another thing I'm evangelical about is empowering like mid-level staffers to show how valuable they are.
Hmm.
You have access to these tools and resources, share them with your group and show them what you're doing, and you'd be amazed how people can benefit from that information as well.
Marvelous. So if someone had some questions, want to talk to you a little bit more about FanIQ, pick your brain, dig into some more of these content topics that we talked about, what's the best way to get a hold of you?
So LinkedIn, Joe Rixon on LinkedIn, Rixon, and then email me as well, Joe at faniq.live. Let's set up a meeting and we'll chat.
Well, Joe, appreciate you hopping on the podcast, dropping some knowledge. Appreciate you just being an open book and helping teams grow, develop, and most importantly, sell more tickets and grow their fan base. So I appreciate everything that you do.
Thank you for having me.